There's also evidence of early city planning, with blocks of houses and water systems running between them. Agriculture, art, and religion all became more sophisticated, and finally, we developed writing systems and written documentation. At the end of the Iron Age, we moved into the early historical period where the documentation of human history pretty much became more widespread. This is basically everything we are sure of about the ancient world, much of which we learned through fossils, but fossils can only tell us so much. How did these people live? What were their daily routines like? What were their favorite foods? Small talk, big dreams? We sadly don't know, and so many people have made theories. What might humans have been like before recorded history started? Much like the Greeks made up myths of powerful gods to explain their daily lives and emotions, people have been developing theories about the history of humankind forever. Theories like the original Eve, a human who birthed, literally or figuratively, the rest of humankind. It could be possible because in the 1980s, DNA sequencing demonstrated that this Eve might have existed as recently as 120,000 years ago. The skulls found in East Africa provided suggestions about what she might have looked like and where she might have lived. People became obsessed with the idea of this real-life Eve, no longer just a figure from the Bible, but a woman who was the ancestor to us all. This idea made its way into pop culture, grasping people worldwide. And what about the possibility that our distant ancestors were much more advanced than we give them credit for? It's always been assumed that humans in the Upper Paleolithic period from 50,000 to 15,000 BC were bands of foragers, never establishing any sort of tradition or organization within their groups. But recently evidence of princely burials and grand buildings have appeared. Burials were found across Western Eurasia. They weren't full cemeteries, but isolated graves of individuals or small groups, bodies placed in specific postures and sometimes decorated with ornaments. The idea that a band of foragers would bury some, but not all, of their dead in this ceremonial way had never been considered. Similarly, stone temples dating back to this time were discovered in Turkey, some over 5 meters high and weighing about 8 tons. The temples had raised pillars and were linked by stone walls, and each post contained a unique sculpture carved with images of the world ancient humans were living in. Such structures imply the coordinated activity of humans. It takes a lot of communication and teamwork to build something so significant. We always assumed little happened in the Paleolithic era, but perhaps there was more of a society than we thought. Maybe ancient humans in this time weren't moving about in small groups, never settling into tradition or community. Perhaps they had leaders and dynasties. The evidence is murky, but who's to say one way or the other? Theories about our ancient ancestors are constantly changing. For instance, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, people in Europe and North America thought that primitive humans weren't capable of full consciousness, like they were still savage in some way. Now, no scholar would claim that. Yet some experts still dismiss distant humans' imagination or skepticism of their world. Others have always taken seriously the idea that humans were our intellectual equals. Why wouldn't they have some sort of political system or burial ceremony? It's almost impossible to know, and the questions don't stop with our human history. What about the history of our planet? What came before us that was never recorded? Could there have been a civilization before humans created the one we live in today? To have civilization, you need a food surplus, which frees up most people to specialize in doing things other than producing food. You need farming, and you also need to require a specific minimum population density, or you wouldn't have enough individuals to run this theoretical civilization. Is there any way we can know if something like this existed?